Hi, welcome to today's episode on cloud adoption in New Zealand. Today I'm going to talk about the cloud adoption framework. So I've got a really short video that I do sort of give some bullet points on, but this one is a less than 2-minute video. The other one's trying to keep about 2 minutes. So today I'm going to talk about the challenges that you have when you move to the cloud. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the tooling and the visibility factors of moving to the cloud. I'm going to talk about infrastructure as code. I'm going to talk about getting from point A to point B in the cloud journey. So what happens when enterprises meet cloud? So the thing that I find is that when people move to the cloud, they then have these challenges, a new set of challenges, and the challenges are around how do you run your cloud, so IT operations, and how do you control the cost in the cloud. And so there's a lot of SaaS tools now that really are focused on cost optimization and trying to reduce that cost, and also trying to understand where your costs are in the cloud, because it can become reasonably complex at scale. So essentially with the cloud adoption framework, you want to try to pull these 6 elements from your business and be able to try to tie them together so that you can have a bit of a map or a roadmap for your journey. And so we take it from being a discovery and business case phase right up to a sort of innovation, scaling growth, and then maybe influencing. I'm not going to focus too much on the scaling growth and influencing because I think the most important things are getting to the innovation. So we talk about this maturity model, which is essentially the cloud adoption framework perspective of where you are in the cloud. So I talk back there as sort of a, more of a simple view, this slide, but this one's more focused on the detail. And so you've got this maturity model, and it basically helps you see where you are, but it also sees some of the steps and things you need to do to get there. One of the things you want to do if you're an enterprise, let's say you've just, you've got your AWS account, for example. This applies to any cloud provider, of course, but you've got you've set up your cloud environment. Then you want to basically separate your dev and production accounts, and that's really important. The other thing is to set up IAM roles, group, and instance profiles. So you want to not just have users in there, you actually want to do that. There is actually a standard sort of best practice architecture that you also use for how you set up your account structure. I won't go into detail. And so CloudWatch is a monitoring tool that you can set up, CloudTrail for auditing. There's also a whole lot of other tools that you should set up as well. I won't get into detail. SNS for topics, so you can send notifications to monitoring systems. You really want to focus on cost optimization day one, rather than doing it as an afterthought. The other thing is that you want to be able to simplify things. So trying to set up a framework for how you're going to basically build in the cloud, and then part of that is really around the discovery phase. And so you need to understand your business drivers while we move to the cloud. Pick a workload, try to build a business case at the same time, get a proof of concept. And the idea of that is out of that discovery phase, you'll also have a map and you can put a plan on a page, for example, of what your migration might look like over the next few months or years in some cases. So the first thing to look at when you're going into the cloud is to look at lift and shift. Now, my video previously I talked about innovation. Now, you can run 2 parallel streams side by side. You could have your traditional lift and shift migration project over here, and then over here you could have a separate team focused on innovation. The good thing about that is that to get to the migration phase, we actually start the migration can be quite a long process. You might have multiple vendors, you've got a lot of legacy apps and data, and you need to do a lot of discovery, and you need probably a really good BA and a technical person who understands the difference between data centers and cloud. Once you've got to that, gone past that traditional and got yourself in the cloud and you've migrated, so many months later or years later you could start your innovation. But like I said before, you can innovate in parallel, and then you can start to bring in and refactor applications and look at how you manage different data sets. So for example, if you've got NoSQL there in Dynamo, and it's not the be all and end all tool, but NoSQL is great for big data, and so you might start using NoSQL for moving off out of traditional relational databases like Oracle, for example. You might move to a NoSQL model for things like BI, analytics, etc. Then the next thing is monitoring. So you really want to improve your monitoring and get more streamlined monitoring, so things like continuous intelligence, etc. So you get visibility real time and beyond real time as well. You want to be able to have things like, where something happens in your environment, you want to be able to have rules that automate fixing things, etc. So continuous integration, Docker containers, AI, Internet of Things, there's hundreds of other things you can do in the cloud, but really starting to innovate at that stage. So once you've innovated and you've got that sort of process going, then depending on the type of company you are, you might start using multiple regions, you have multiple workloads, you're all in, you're all in the cloud. You might have a few workloads left, in traditional data center world, but essentially you're all in. The cultural shift has changed across your whole organization, especially your IT organization, but also your business units. There's buy-in to the cloud way of doing things. You've adopted a DevOps model, a way of working. And just be very clear here is that we want to be careful of buzzwords. I mean, when I talk about DevOps, I'm really talking about the culture, and I'm talking about not just using a whole lot of tools because they're cool. I'm talking more about the culture change as well. That is required if you want to get to this point. And you've got a bit more of a clear framework and processes. I talked a little bit about it in another video around enterprises, around setting up a cloud center of excellence, or COE. And so at this point, you would have set up one, you'd have one that's quite mature. And so this could take a few years, and it does take a few years. And then, voila, if you're like these guys, then you can become an influencer and go and talk at conferences and all sorts of cool stuff, if that floats your boat. And here's some examples of what happens when you move from traditional to AWS, for example. Purchasing used to take months, now it takes minutes. You're not buying all this massive upfront hardware, you're only paying for what you use. Software licensing, you've got more choice, or you've got different approaches you can use. So whether you pay as you go licensing, or you pay up front still for certain things, etc. Software development, so you can try out new things, you can try out new versions of libraries for your software developers. Storage is generally expensive to maintain and operate when you're on premise. In general, I mean, this is a generalization, but when you move to the cloud, you've got lots of different storage options. So you don't have to have stuff in your top storage tier. You can have stuff in archiving, etc., and it's a lot cheaper. Security, most enterprises I've worked with who move to AWS, for example, there's a whole lot of security holes that they have, and this is endemic of the whole industry, is that things like PCI compliance, HIPAA, health records, all sorts of compliance programs that they need to be a part of as part of processing credit card payments for PCI, processing confidential information for health records, for example, or defense level record type stuff. We've got different classifications. Unfortunately, what's happened with legacy IT is that security has become an unknown thing. It's a constantly monitored thing, and a lot of enterprises I've seen don't 100% meet, a lot of their compliance programs anyway. So, I'm not saying you'll definitely meet those in the cloud 100% because it requires a lot of investment, but by default, you have a lot of tools at your disposal for compliance and security. I hope this makes sense. I'm just blabbing now. Anyway, so, the next thing about enterprises is that basically everything should be treated as code. I mean, I really like the idea of when you're moving to the cloud, stop treating it like a data center. Once you've done your lift and shift, then you need to start innovating and start treating it as code. Everything in the cloud is API driven. You can use SDK, software development kits, and basically what that means is that you can hook into the APIs to build stuff, and you can build workflows, for example, for certain things, or you can, integrate cloud APIs into your software. And so it's really important to treat everything as code. Well, most things anyway. So for an IT operations team, for example, you can do manual deployments, but you want to go to sort of, using tools like Ansible, etc. And there's other tools, there's software tools out there as well that help you automate things. So for example, if Ansible, you can launch a batch of service rather than manually doing it. You can have chat ops. So you can basically, what chat ops is basically if you want to manage your infrastructure and you want to have good visibility in your infrastructure, you might be using Slack or Microsoft Teams, for example, then you can get notifications. And so I've done a little chat bot where basically I get information about infrastructure. For example, if a server goes down or an app goes down or a database goes down, then I can get a notification straight away to my team. There's lots of other things you can do, and so I won't talk about those. But yeah, this is getting more into detail. There's lots of things you can do as an enterprise. So here's a link for you. This is a video, so it's not a clickable link, but essentially you want to go and search for the AWS Cloud Adoption Framework white paper, and you want to have a read of that. You also want to look at the CAF and the Cloud Adoption Framework. Part of Teem, we facilitate Cloud Adoption Framework as well. I've actually done the training, so it's a really good thing. Basically, just to get in the room, have a workshop with the important, factors that make up, sort of enterprise. Those 6 areas that I talked about. And so, if you do need help in that area, obviously go online and do the research. But I think it's also good to basically talk to AWS if you want some help by myself as well. Feel free to email me, just ask questions. Happy to answer questions as well. So, hey, thanks for watching, and really enjoyed this, and hope we can basically keep on learning together as we take this journey into the cloud.